Yeah. So, well, yeah. How is AI affecting you? I mean, I was just in a conversation last weekend. I was at a Purdue hackathon, and it was made up of mostly like freshmen and sophomores, and then the smattering of juniors, and then I think one senior. So most of these are like almost kids, like 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. And they're wondering, like they're paying for a Purdue education. Yeah. And they want to know, like how's this affecting, is AI going to affect our software engineering career that we're about to go into? We're not even in it yet. I don't know, what do you guys think?
We literally just interviewed three finalist candidates for an summer internship position. And I would say a good, probably more than half of the interviewing was talking about, how are you using AI tools? What AI tools are you using? Do you understand them? Do you, how are you using them? Are you using them to learn? Are you using them to just get out of doing, the work? What's the thought process behind that? And I think that's a big part about who's going to succeed in this,
So is that a requirement, like from your management? That
I don't see how people can succeed in the job market right now without being AI native and really embracing the tools.
So are there any that just don't?
These were the finalists. So
these are the finalists. Okay.
Out of a couple hundred applicants, we brought in the three most promising ones.
Okay. So there were three.
They all had good answers.
Yeah.
Some of them knew how to use the tools really well, and some were actually learning, how do you manage these tools? How do you, administer the tools? How do you, rack, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Getting deep into the bowels of how it works. And so, I do think it's good that, all of them seem to understand that it's not magic and it's really just math under the hood. And so I think it's important for people to understand that, because you start thinking, oh, it's talking to me in English. It's aware and it knows things. And it's, but you got to remember, it's doing matrix math and it's just predicting what to tell you. So I think keeping people that can keep that in mind,
do they do better with it, you find?
I think so, because you stop trusting it
implicitly. Yeah.
You realize it is not a entity, a conscious entity on the other end. It's doing math and it's giving you helpful information, but it can be wrong. And so I think it's important for people to understand that it can be wrong.
I think like with that, like being younger and like you need to use the tools, but I think it's also important to like learn without using the tools. Because I graduated college in 23, so it was right when ChatGPT was coming out, and like I did like a giant final paper, right?
Yeah.
And that's when everyone was like, "Oh, this can just write an essay for me," and it's like all of a sudden the people who don't know what they're doing are getting really good grades, like and it's like they didn't spend any time like learning, and now they're like relying on AI, and it's a lot harder to assess whether the AI is right at all or not.
But,
I will say, I get the point about learning without AI. But I would say AI is a great tool to help learn.
Oh yeah.
I think that honestly is the biggest thing to me about AI, because typing was never the hard part.
Oh yeah.
About doing software engineering. It was always the thinking through the problems and understanding options and having this thing you can have this conversation with about what are my options, what are some of the tools out there that I don't know about that I can go dig into deeper. And that is such a huge huge part of this. That
Remember when we used to use like Google and? Bing
I
and st-
remember
and
going
stack
to the
overflow?
library and looking stuff
Yeah,
up in a
yeah.
book
Dewey
because
Decimal
stuff
System.
was done.
Dewey Decimal System.
And just hoping like there was a code example. Back when Bing had good code examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now, like I'm finding, because now we have all the world's knowledge, right? And I keep Copilot open all the time, not Copilot in VS Code. I mean, I do, obviously, 'cause, yeah, Microsoft, but I keep Copilot like the application or the website open. And anytime I run into a topic I don't know, I ask it about it. And then it goes and explains it to me. I'm like, oh, now I have like the high level understanding of this. Now let me continue. And that was, I was just talking with one of our guys today, and we were talking about ag pipelines. And I think he had been mentioning, like, he was talking like Claude, and I'm like, interesting, well, I use the Copilot feature all the time because I can save its results to a page. Does anyone use that feature?
You mean like save it to a markdown?
No, so like the Copilot application, not Copilot in Visual Studio like VS Code or VS. Which is the Microsoft Copilot, the pretty rainbow looking thing in your taskbar if you're running Windows 11. I'll go and I'll ask it a question and then it gives me this detailed information. I'm like, oh yeah, save that as a page. And now I have research. And what is cool is that if you do like a Control A, Control C,
Yeah.
it's marked up. So if I paste it in VS Code, it comes in as Markdown. And I was like, whoa. Because I would have Copilot generate prompts for me. I'm like, I would ask it all these questions. Like, can I do this? Can I do that? Give me an example. Okay, I like all this. Now write the prompt. It's like, okay, yeah, here's a prompt. They'll do what you want. Like, okay, cool. And then I'll take that and just paste it in. It's already in Markdown format, like properly formatted everything. It's very useful.
I find it interesting, Copilot's like so inclined to write markdown, like for every decision, like, I guess it's beneficial, like you mentioned, like it's beneficial for you, but I'm like, it always wants me to commit markdown files, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't necessarily want that for every single change. Or like, I use Writer and then Copilot, both in
Yeah.
Writer's Studio, but I like Writer because it just gives me the code, because I already know the decisions I'm making and
Like the
stuff like that.
JetBrains writer?
Yeah, JetBrains.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And then Copilot will do the same thing, and it's like, oh, here's 100 or giant page of documentation.
that's all.
Probably don't necessarily want, but
Yeah,
like I can see the good use for it, and especially if you're Microsoft and you're used to working with computers and saving files down for decisions like that.
well, everything in Copilot works best if it's in Markdown.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's giving it to you now.
Yeah.
But from a software engineering perspective though, how are you finding that it affects your career?
I feel like I've been forced might be too strong. I've had to learn more in the last year than I've had to the previous 15 years of my career. And not just about AI, just the ability to learn so many things so quickly is,
Yeah.
you
The input overload of,
and yeah, and before it was just, I was always learning stuff, but
yeah,
you can only learn stuff as fast as you can, work through a Google search and, read all of these different
Yeah.
sources and try and piece together the thing you're really looking for. And so just having the ability to drill into the exact thing I'm looking
Yeah.
for so quickly has made it so
Yeah.
much easier to learn. And then on top of that, I've needed to learn about all of the latest AI changes that happen every week, it seems like. And
Yeah.
learning how to, and in this last week or so, I've spent almost all my time doing things to make Copilot work better
Yeah.
for my code base. So
Well, I've been finding I'm enjoying coding more these days than I think I have in a few years. Like I've always enjoyed code. Like or not code, like code. but like the architecture of building an application and like figuring it out and saying, okay, here's the data model, and then how do I build that application from, like greenfield development, and, how would I architect this? And then I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how I want to architect it. And then I'm like, I gotta build this foundation. And I'm like, all right, like, I don't mind like building like core services and models and all that stuff, but it takes so much time. It takes so much time, like the stuff that you used to have to do. And now I can be like, okay, here's what I want. Come up with a plan. And here's like the key items that, and like how I kind of like some of the data models that I want.
Yeah.
And here's the architecture I'm gonna approach. Here's the technology I'm gonna use. And by the way, I've scaffolded out a skeleton structure for you to fill in. So let's start with feature one. The data layer. Let's go. And it's like, sure thing, boss, And I'm like, sweet, like it never gets tired. It's just a good idea, Really smart. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm like, you're right. I am absolutely right. And it screws up and it tells me that I'm absolutely right when I call it out. But for the most part, I think if I monitor all the code that it builds and I listen to its reasoning behind it, I can go feature by feature and build things. And I feel like I'm accomplishing something at a velocity and still a high quality that I've never been able to do before. And it's refreshing because I think part of what got us into software was we want to build cool stuff. We like making the computer do what we want. I can make, like I remember when I was a kid, I thought the most amazing freaking thing I'd ever seen was word wrap. I didn't understand how they did word wrap as a kid. I was like, how does it get to the end of the screen and then they figure out how to move it to the, like, I didn't understand like buffers and arrays and all that other stuff, but like I slowly but surely learned how that would work. And then they just came out with tools that did it for me. You don't have to worry about word wrap anymore, right?
Yeah.
When was all but none of us have had to write a word wrap algorithm because there's a control that does it. Everything's GUI. And it's like, oh my gosh, unless you write a console application, then maybe, maybe you have to, deal with it. But I'm like excited about coming up with a new idea now because it's like, it's not going to take me like 2 weeks just to get the basics done before I actually start working on the cool part that I'm excited about right now that I know 2 weeks from now, I'm not going to be excited. Or something will come up at work, like, yeah.
So I agree. I've been able to write code so much faster than I could before. Get to the heart
Is it
of the
right
problem.
coders that build software?
Build software. But that's just moved the pain point from actually, making the changes to reviewing the changes.
Yes.
And now reviewing the changes is becoming much more painful because there's so much that's changing and it's, trying to, figure out how to manage the review process and really not let things slip by you has been the challenging part. We're using Copilot for code reviews as a first pass on all code reviews, and that's been super helpful.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite features of Copilot.
GitHub Copilot,
We use GitHub, and GitHub Copilot, whenever we open a pull request, it's set to automatically do a review of the code. And so that has been great, but it still doesn't catch everything, and it doesn't.
Sometimes it hallucinates a problem.
It's good at finding, I have found it's good at finding problems that humans miss pretty easily.
Yeah. I found it finding security issues where I hadn't thought about it.
It's also flagged a bunch of typos that have been there for like a decade. And it's like, okay, well, you're the first one that's ever seen that. But so that's great. But then the the hard to catch problems are there that, the context of, oh, you made this change over here, now this thing over here is now silently not working the same way.
Yeah,
Maybe this was written, this application that we're working on is,
Yeah.
we started in 2017, so it did not get the AI first treatment. And so now we're slowly trying to make it a little bit more AI friendly
Yeah.
as a project. But so we don't have a lot of tests that we probably should have, and we need to get around to writing those, but so just getting to a place where comfortable with changes that the AI is helping accelerate
yeah.
is.
Can I join the conversation?
Well, you have to come up
Okay.
here and the one process.
You can sit, you can sit. Only three people there?
Go ahead.
No, one person has to leave.
Oh, so.
That's
No,
normal.
no. So the only, point I wanted to make is you mentioned juniors and, people coming into the profession, right? So what you just said, right? The focus of the job has changed from actually coding to orchestrating these things
Yeah.
that can generate the code, right? So a lot of that comes with judgment that you accrued with the years you've spent building, right? Like
Right.
working with
And that's
somebody,
key. That
Work-
judgment.
working with your seniors, working with your mentor, somebody that was working with you to get you to that state. So you could do the same implementation in three different ways, right? So which one is the better one? Which one helps you scale? What are the, architectural decisions, how you get to that, right? I learned it working with my peers, with my seniors, right? And now they're expecting, I feel like that space has been absorbed, like that doesn't exist. I don't see people recruiting at that level, right? So you're expected to know
On the
that.
senior level or the
No, I
junior
mean, as the junior,
The
as the
junior.
junior, or like when you start as a junior developer, you're expected to already, like to his point, you're expected to use the tools, know the tools and ready to build.
Yeah.
Versus learn that on the code, right? How to get to that is something that we, like, especially if you're in college or trying to get into job market, you need to learn that skill.
Yeah. Well, there was someone online saying, selfish Sean. I don't know why it says, oh, there we go. I thought that was what it said your name was, Sean. And then I realized you just typed selfish Sean. So Sean says, this is awesome. More responsible Sean says, we're destroying our own future. I'm not sure about that. I was having that conversation today with someone. Yeah, no matter what you do, there's tools that are going to come across. Yeah, all the time with development. For at one point we had autocomplete. Other times we had automatic scaffolding of databases. Anybody remember any framework? We had templates. We used Stack Overflow. We had tools that would bring code in from Stack Overflow. It was called GitHub Copilot years ago before even GPT. Anybody remember that? You can hit tab. It would give you code examples. It was in preview. Anyway, this is yet another tool. Not like yet another JavaScript framework. This is yet another tool, and you have to learn how to use it. It's a tool that's making you doesn't make you a better developer. I find potentially, but it can also make you a very lazy developer. Oh, whoever's unmuted, make sure you mute because you're having a conversation in the background. So if you're not, I think you just have to accept that this is another tool in your toolbox that you have to use in order to be more productive. And you'll get things done faster, possibly more reliably. And another developer that I was talking about today, talking to, he said, you know what, I think he was saying everything tends to land in the middle. We think it's gonna blow everything up, well, it's gonna do nothing. He's like, it always lands in the middle. And I think in that case, you're right. Like when you were saying that it's not a thinking machine, right? It looks good, but it can't really be creative.
We as humans tend to anthropomorphize everything.
we're human.
And AI is just another thing we
Yeah.
anthropomorphize. It's important to remember. It's not a person.
Understanding that, right? When you-
Yeah.
when it's a tool, you still are the driver, right? You are
Yeah.
expected to steer it the right way, prompt it the right way, fine tune it, go through iteration,
Yeah.
and that's where the judgment and your experience comes. You might be able to move faster. The other thing I would say is you're not also restricted now, right? So everybody's a builder now. You could,
Yeah,
if you-
anyone can build.
if you had a, front end development was your expertise, you could now scale also into the back end. Like you could explore and build things that you did not have experience in, right? So it's an opportunity to learn, but there's the other side of it where we're seeing a lot of slop that is coming
Yeah.
into.
But you're accountable for that. And Sean, I think you said you had something to say online.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in because I'm not trying to present AI as doomy gloomy, and you're absolutely right. It's another tool in the tool set, but there is something fundamentally different because it's not just another tool. It's not IntelliSense, it's not IDE, it's none of that. And the equivalent that I'm going to bring up is going to be a cell phone. When cell phones got introduced and we all rushed into it, we never realized or could even imagine the impact that it will have on psychology, especially young folks. Only now, decades after we discovering the effects and the implications, right? The positives and the negatives. No one's saying that it's negative, but we're also not saying that this technology was just marvelous and all, hunky-dory and fantastic. We know that there are drawbacks to it. Now, going back to AI specifically, what concerns me is the fact that we are getting into monoculture. And what I mean by monoculture is monoculture.
Monoculture? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here's a good example. All of us have probably gone to Stack Overflow to search for an answer to a question. And not always the answer that was marked as an answer accepted by everyone is necessarily was the answer for your problem that you were looking for. But in the process of reading, going through, evaluating different perspectives, you actually learned more than just, hey, give me immediate answer to my problem. It's like nowadays going to a physician and saying, hey, I have a problem. And the prescription is always antibiotics. Right?
That's
So-
true.
That is the concern that I'm having, and the fellow on the panel has said that in order to use a tool, you haven't started right away. You actually have gone through some learning process. There was some wiring in your brain, so now you're at the level where you use this tool and you can differentiate between something that is hallucination versus something that is actual answer and reap the value from it. And my concern is that we get into the point where people blindly accept whatever is spit by LLM because they just haven't gone through the manual sticks and stones, right, to learn to differentiate between what's a good answer and what's a bad answer. And we're only going to discover that a few years down the road.
I don't think that's true. Well, I get what you're saying, but I disagree that we're gonna find that out a few years down the road. We're seeing that now. I mean, how many people in here, have had someone go reach out to them going, oh, I built this thing with a, insert, bolt or lovable or whatever, base 44, what have you. And I need to get this thing in production this week. And then they're surprised when you're like, yeah, I'm, $175 an hour. And it's gonna take, I gotta do discovery and figure out what in the world you built because you don't know what you built. So.
Well,
Well, hold on a sec. The reason I bring this up is I was talking I've had this conversation twice now, which is why I'm so excited about it. This weekend, we were talking about, like the software engineers, you're accountable to the code you write, even if the LLM writes it for you. And it's akin to the auto mechanic versus the do-it-yourselfer. So if you've got, you can go to YouTube and you can watch videos about how to change your oil and how to change your brakes, etc. But when you don't change the oil properly, Or you don't change the brakes properly. You find out that, oops, I left that one cap off and now, my engine's blown because the oil leaked out. Or my wheels fell off because I didn't understand how to properly torque the bolts. That's when you come to my son and say, oh, hey, professional, what do you mean it's $2,000 to repair it? Well, it's because at some point you have to go to the professionals who understand it. And software architecture and software engineering and software in general is an engineering practice. Anyone can write a book, not everyone can write a good book.
You're right about that. When we have this conversation among ourselves, developers, the problem is software development is not just about software developers. Case in point, a large consultancy, software consultancy out of Europe, has decided that they're moving away from a pyramid shape hiring to a diamond hiring. What does that mean? That means cutting as much as possible on the juniors to cut their expenses. Now, again, the results of that policy are not going to be felt right away. They're going to be felt in a few years when the top of that diamond is going to retire, right? And you're going to have a very small number of juniors moving up into intermediate. That's one example. Another example, personally, I think there's a problem of outsourcing 2.0 that we're going to experience. And what I mean by that is LLMs being trained on the job that, let's say, North American developers are performing, outsourcing that again to a market where developer, can be hired for much lower rate. And we've already seen what that's going to cause. We don't know exactly what it's going to cost this time around with AI tooling. So it's not like we're going to see just because AI is developing or the AI platforms and tooling is developing quickly, we're going to see the results right away. Absolutely not. It's going to take a few years before we actually understand what this change is causing. What I can tell you right away is that I'm going to LinkedIn and I see more and more people with available for work or open for networking, whatever the ribbon is, right? Way more than I've seen that even a year ago.
I do want to talk to that specific thing though. So there's been a lot of, very public announcements about layoffs in the last, 6 months or so. And well, yeah, but they're all saying, oh, we're embracing AI and, that's their justification for the layoffs. When in reality, the way these, giant corporations works, they have shareholders and
What?
they have to make themselves look as good to the shareholders as possible. And so, we're coming out of, still to a certain extent coming out of the pandemic and, and all of that stuff, where hiring just went nuts. A lot of these big companies just way overhired. And so now the economy started doing a little bit of a downturn and they're going, oh, we've got all these people we, don't really need. And
that's not all software.
Yeah. But their options, so as business owners, they're going, we need to get rid of these people. Their options are to tell their shareholders, we're letting all these people go because we overhired, we poorly managed our business. Or we can say, we're letting all these people go because of AI, and suddenly they look like they're investing in the future when they're getting the exact same outcome. So I think it's important that keep in mind that not all of these jobs are people losing their jobs directly because of AI.
This word you keep using, I do not think it means what you think it means.
So, yeah, that's all I want to say about that is that there is a big incentive to say we're letting these people off because of AI.
You are going to find out though that, it's not like AI is not a big disruptor. So I don't think anyone's saying AI is not a disruptor. And no one's saying AI won't affect jobs. No one's saying that. I do think that no business is, I'd say every business is in business to make money. Otherwise, you find that you're not in business. I mean, it's very simple addition and subtraction. So if you want to, and you tend to try to do more with less, I think every company I've ever worked for tries to do more with less. You don't want to go hire uncontrollably because what if there's a downturn? What if there's not enough work, etc. At some point, you got to let people go, and letting people go, depending on the country you're in, is not easy. Like you're talking about offshoring, like it's the easiest thing in the world. When you're in India, you know, in general in India, you have a 3-month notice you have to give. So you can't just like get rid of people in India just because they're cheaper. You have to hold on to them for three months, you know, and it's to keep people accountable for the cost effectiveness. Of course, cost of living is a lot lower there, but we go on and on about India.
I actually came up here to respond. So you use the analogy of it being like AI being like the analogy for AI being the smartphone. And I suspect the closer analogy might be the tractor, in that, you know, back when the tractor was first introduced, most people's jobs was farm labor.
Yeah.
And they rightly said, whenever the tractor happened, we're going to lose our jobs. You know, this is going to, you know, this is a bad thing because we're going to lose our jobs. And they did lose their jobs, a lot of them. But now farmers are making more food than they've ever made before. There are a lot fewer of them, though. That is, I think that's likely the future that we are heading towards, one way or the other. But
to some extent, I mean, yeah, you're just gonna have to deal with that. I mean, the AI, you know, is going to affect some industries more than others. It will affect our industry. I think if you're not embracing AI, you will not have the productivity that you would get that's going to be expected of you. So I think the bar has been raised about productivity and velocity. And I do think that it will shake out the people who aren't actual software engineers. You know, I mean, if all you did was you never want to learn the craft and you just want to, you know, copy and paste from Stack Overflow and do, you know, like templated work and no custom development. Yeah, I think AI replaces you. Yeah. Now, does it fully replace you? No. You know, like if you're building like content management systems, etc., like WordPress, etc., there's a lot of custom development that goes into that stuff. And doing it right, building it right, requires the engineer that understands how that system works. So you can't just deploy it. It's just as bad as, you know, 10 or 20 years ago. Remember, does everyone remember GeoCities? Everybody got a website.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Everybody got a website, you know. Wix came out. People stopped hiring. People stopped hiring people when Wix came out and Squarespace came out, because I can just do it by dragging and dropping. And then you found out that, you know, no one understands how to put an e-commerce site together because they don't understand all the systems in play to build such a system like that. So, you know, the reason you hire a software engineer, and I'd say, yeah, software engineering team, is to build a product. And when that product's built, they might not keep you on, because why would they?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, unless you have to maintain the product.
So I will say, I think there's going to be some market disruption on the top end of the industry.
Yeah.
I do think that it opens up new opportunities in software that we probably aren't thinking about right now. I think, like, you know, a big reason a lot of places don't have software engineers is because we're expensive, and, you know, if you want to do something of any decent size, you need to hire a team of software engineers. And so I think there's going to be places that are like, hey, you can hire a software engineer and they can get a lot of stuff done. So now we're going to hire a software engineer. And, you know, so I think that you're probably going to see a lot of the big places that have thousands and thousands of software engineers. I think that number's going to go down, but I think you're going to see a lot of places that suddenly have a software engineer. So
I think the smaller you are, I think the bigger you are, the bigger the numbers when they have to cut costs. And there's a lot of things happening right now in the world that require you to cut costs. When interest rates are high, staff gets cut. Because you got to pay money on your money that you're borrowing. So if it used to cost you 2% 4 or 5 years ago, and now it costs you 6.5%, that's a big dollar amount. Okay, so if you take that into context, and then you look at the layoffs, have you noticed that the worse the economy seems to get, the more layoffs you have? And it's bigger numbers because if the company isn't selling as much of what they were selling their widgets, you get rid of you got to cut the fat. And sometimes you cut into, it's not fat. You got to get rid of people. It's not because they were bad. And it wasn't because necessarily of AI. But you do hope to make up those costs with additional AI efficiency. So you might come out of it better, because as you trim down, you'll find those additional efficiencies. But you end up hiring again. We're starting to see that market. Jason might be able to speak to that. That market has kind of turned around the past year. To what full stack engineers, I think you were saying, seem to be in demand again. When, gosh, a year ago, it was like a desert. And
I think you're gonna find that it's gonna be much harder to be a one-trick pony software developer.
Yeah.
Like if you're just a React developer, I'd tell you about the Claude can do a great job writing React.
Yeah.
But if you need to think about like an entire system from, start to finish, that is still outside of the scope of a Claude, really, keeping all that stuff in mind and understanding how all the pieces work together and all that stuff. So I think the trend could be towards that full stack, really understanding high level architecture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
but if you understand like the big picture of things, I think that's where AI becomes the great, not the differentiator. I'm blanking on the word, but the anything that you need to build, as long as you understand it in one technology or stack, you can build it in any stack because you can explain it. Because you're an engineer, you can explain what you want to build.
Yeah.
And I think
But
that's
you're
where you
still
run into issue.
full stack engineer,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what I was talking up to. Like I come from 15 years of mobile app development.
Mhm.
Right? So focused heavily on the client side and the front end, if you will, right? But that separation of there's a team of backend devs, and then they are working on the API development and all of the infrastructure and all of that, right? Versus a front end team that's focused on the experience on the UI. I'm seeing that as being broken, right? It's more one dev or one team owning it across the entire pipeline, right? So you have to be that full stack developer that understands the back end too, like the knowledge gap that you have, even if you are a senior dev, right? You can no longer be just a front end dev, right? You have to be more on the full stack.
but the good news is it's never been easier to learn that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Like, I don't know.
I think that the real differentiator between software engineers will be people that are willing to embrace the tools and learn and, really lean into it, and the people who don't, unfortunately.
So
It's shifting it. Sorry, but
I'm just curious, how do we communicate this to our teams? Because I think sometimes I think it can be, and change is always scary, right? Change is always scary. Any major disruption is scary. Like remember when database documents or database or document databases came out, and everyone thought like SQL Server was going to go away. Like anybody remember that? It was like, oh, this is going to change everything. Nobody's ever going to want to do blah 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 again. And then here we are, SQL Server 2025 and blah blah blah. But all that being said, how do we communicate to our team that, look, yes, you're going to be expected to have additional velocity. And there's going to be expectations that these AI tools are going to do a lot of what you used to do before, but that doesn't mean your job's at risk. I mean, I tend to think it's enabling you more, to actually have more fun in your day to day because you're not constantly looking at the grunt work side of things. You have to concentrate on, you can concentrate on the minutia and the big picture if you want. And both of those are important, but then you're not going to be punished for doing that because you can actually have all the stuff in between can get built for you and quickly in its scale. But some people get afraid of that. And they're like, well, I got to go somewhere that you're not going to expect that much of me. I really think this is going to take my job away. And it's like, how do you communicate? This is a benefit.
Keep going there. I think,
Maybe benefit's the wrong word.
on our team, we are constantly talking about how are we using these tools? How are we going to change our processes to make our processes work better with these tools? How are we going to, implement these new features that came out last week that are, seem to be useful? So we're constantly talking about this stuff and how we're going to use it and how we can benefit from this stuff. So and having a culture of, embracing change, is the best way to do it.
Yeah. And what were you thinking?
I would say if that conversation is not happening at your level, it's probably happening at a much higher level behind the closed door. That is happening. Everybody should own your career. Like, look, you cannot be just looking at your teams. Understand the world has changed. Fundamentally, how we write software has changed. Don't get tied to your enterprise and your team, right? Go beyond that and learn the tools. A lot of, enterprises and companies surprisingly still don't have not onboarded these AI development tools. Like, they're coming up with Copilot licenses because it's bundled as part of the Microsoft licenses. But even if you don't have it, go do it, get that subscription out of your pocket. That is the investment that you have to make. This time, is the time to look for that growth and your personal growth. And you have to invest in that, right? Because if you don't, somebody else, the layoffs, that the famous quote is AI is not going to replace you, somebody that knows how to use AI. There are plenty of them and everybody is trying to perfect or get more cycles under their belt, right? Like, you have to take, every person has to take a personal responsibility in their career because this is not anything like, what we've seen previously. This is a tool, but it's significantly different from the other waves we've seen. So,
I'm finding, and then saying, so like we rolled out, because we're a consulting firm, which this is very difficult for us in the sense that how do you accommodate let's say what used to take a certain amount of time and now it takes maybe half that. AI doesn't solve everything. Like AI, I've not found to do great architecture work, but it can suggest good architecture. And then you
Give
can
you a bunch of really good.
Yeah, it can really give you a pro con. I love the pro con. It just changes my day because it's hard to do that with, and at the same time, I think people come to us to build enterprise grade applications that don't go down in the vibe coding, because I can't call it AI coding. I don't know what to call it. So, or agentic development. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Still better than mine.
But what we did internally is starting in November, You know, like we talked about this for months. We're like, what is our approach with AI? And we need buy-in from the very top, like CEO on down. We're not gonna play with AI. We're gonna buy in. So no slop. Like if you check in code, you're accountable. Remember, you can do anything you want on your last day. Yeah, it's the same thing. You know, you can't blame the AI. And so so we set a set of rules about how we're going to do agentic development. And then we had to adjust how we structure projects, etc. But gosh, I think we deliver better products now with less stress. I think the 40-hour work week is actually real again. And I remember being at consulting firms where people would work 60+ hours because you're like, how do I get this done? And I can't get another resource to do it. And I've got an agent now that not only knows everything that the agent knows, but can call out to MCPs and hit like Microsoft best practices and Azure best practices and Context 7 and get the latest code examples and hit Stack Overflow and hit Figma and tie everything together in a way that we never could have done before. And we don't have to go hire 3 more people to get it done.
We could have done that before. It would have taken us.
It would take a
10
long
times.
time.
Yeah.
And you'd have to find the resources. Oop.
I was gonna ask you about MCP.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can explain MCPs afterwards.
Yeah, I was curious with
They can explain MCP too.
one thing you mentioned, like how so like my AI flow right now is like I normally use agent with a targeted question, I'm running tests for something or, I want to do something. Sometimes I ask, but I normally like just use the agent and ID, but we don't have anything connected to like MCPs. And you mentioned you were improving your AI workflow in your company. I was curious what steps you were taking or like what's been beneficial.
So we've been spending a lot of time. So we're working on a long-lived code base that has evolved over time and is not AI native, code base. So we've been investing a lot of time in doing things like, building good Copilot instructions and, GitHub just enabled some stuff where like skills and agents and instructions, but more than just like the Copilot instructions that they already supported. It's I think it's called path-based instructions or something like that, where you can say for these types of files, include these instructions in the context. So we've just been spending a lot of time thinking about how do we make the AI work with our code base as well as possible so that what we're getting back does have the context that it needs for our application. It understands the decisions that we've made, understands how we want things done. Because that just improves that loop, and so investing time in thinking about how to do that has been very helpful.
So has it been more of like a knowledgeable, like almost not like a winter, but like, it's like, oh, I'm handling a view file, but this is how our company handles view files.
Yeah.
And are you using like a markdown for that or?
Yeah, it's a markdown.
Okay.
It's just text. So
Yeah.
it just gets included in the context window of your prompt and.
Did you even really go?
No.
I'm not getting anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, where?
Buckets.
Can you not hear us?
I think they
Okay.
now.
I can hear. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I can hear you.
okay. It's working. Cool. I was slowly moving out of frame.
Where it was now. Yeah, but it's just about, all of the different models have different context window sizes. I think Copilot actually artificially limits them on top of that, but So that's a valuable resource. So to get the best responses, you want to make sure you're managing what gets in that context window. And so the instructions files, the skills files, agents, those can really help you get better responses. And you can have, your models help write these files too, so tell it, review my code base, take some notes of the thing, these things, and summarize that into an instructions file, and then you get the first draft and you can work through that stuff. So that has been helpful so far. So
That helps the token usage too. So the agent.md file basically is context that you're giving, especially for a legacy code base that has like 10,000 parts, right?
And it probably has a lot
So
of
when you ask a
decisions.
question, it doesn't know where and what, right? So what it tries to do is like, okay, it's trying to get the context. In a lot of cases, it's trying to recompute and understand the code base again. So these files, agent.md, is giving context about the code base. It can be nested too. So you're saying within a folder or within a sub module, you can have a markup file that is documenting what that folder is, right? And then those can be nested. So you have a project level one, you have a folder level one, and that gives the context to the agent. You can directly pick that up. It kind of translates into how efficiently you're using your tokens in the model that you're using, right? But also the context about the overall project and including the instructions about how, like the preferred style, right? Like how you do it your way for your team. That's all codified in those documents.
and if you want a good starting point, can also be, there's a GitHub repo. It's in the GitHub organization, so it's managed by GitHub. It's the repo's called Awesome Copilot,
Awesome Copilot.
and they got a bunch of like example agent files, a bunch of example skills, a bunch of examples of instructions files. So it's a good place to get started. You can just go copy that stuff and put it in your repo, and you might want to read it and make sure it actually makes sense to what you
Yeah,
want.
Because
But
the
it's a good
skills
start.
are like so in January, my company was like, okay, we're moving to GitHub. We're using Copilot now, and I've used it before and stuff.
Close to work.
Yeah, and then like I jumped like straight into agent and I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. Like this is way better than chat where you're like, oh, here's the file. And then you copy paste it back and stuff. And I'm like, I love agent, but I haven't picked up the skills yet part of it.
Yeah,
It
so-
seems like that would be useful.
So skills are. It's funny because like there's this gray area about what a skill is that is, because there's some overlap with what instructions files are too. Where it's, in the end, it's really just a way to get a set of text in the context of your conversation with the agent.
Yeah, then you build out your own agents.
But, instructions are more like, for C# files, do this or
Yeah.
organize it this way or whatever. But a skill is more like a type of task usually. So
Yeah. I just meant like that was like the next step where I'm like, oh, I probably should jump on that too. Like,
Yeah, so
skills and then
look into it,
instructions as
yeah.
well.
I would consider the script for
Yeah.
doing that specific task.
Yeah.
Anything that you're repeatedly doing, you just document that as a instruction set, right?
yeah,
So
and
this
you
is how
can
do it.
literally include scripts in your skills. And
Yeah.
you can tell it, use this script to do this type of thing, and these are the arguments you can pass into it, and you're basically teaching it how to use this tool to do stuff. And so it can be very, very useful, but it's just another way of getting text into the context of your conversation.
Just 10,000 feet up, just go to github.com/copilot and just go read the documentation.
Mhm.
Like Awesome Copilot is an awesome place to start, but not just what Copilot does, because they all kind of do the same thing right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have different names for it for the most part, except for, some of the files have different names. Like this Claude.md or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, Copilot instructions.md, but they all kind of have like their own dot, whatever they are. folder that then has all the other crap in it.
Yeah,
But-
somebody will come up with an idea of how to do something and everybody else is like, it's a good idea. Let's go ahead and do that too.
But right now, it's got like a section on their site to make it easy for you to like move to them.
Mm,
They're like, just go to this folder and copy and paste this, because they know right now there's no real vendor lock-in,
Yeah.
but
And
If
it's
you-
gonna
if
be
you go to-
really hard to.
but check out that Dropbox.
lock in.
they have full training. Training that'll walk you through all of this. And Microsoft Learn, that's what I wanted to talk about, was you can go go to Microsoft Learn and look at Copilot fundamentals.
Yeah.
And like GitHub Copilot fundamentals, and it'll walk you through all of this. Prompt engineering, how the prompt windows, how the context windows work, how to properly mention documents, how to correlate things. It's all there. And then once you understand that, you'll build better prompts.
Yeah.
And all this stuff ends up kind of like feeding off of prompts anyway. It's just a set of instructions, be it a skill or agent or whatever. It's how you formulate it. So as long as you understand the structure, you'll be even more powerful. Yeah. And it's incredible. Yeah.
I think it's been very helpful to understand how things are working too.
Yeah.
Like one thing that, was kind of a black box to me until we had a conversation a couple weeks ago was understanding what an agent is. It's really just a loop. And what's happening is the agent is a set of options that the LLM can choose, and it's choosing to do one of these options that it has available. And one of the option is end, and so that's how the agent ends its thing, but it's really just a loop, and it's choosing options from what it has available. And you can add more options by using MCP servers or whatever. And so I've found that getting rid of some of the magic around it has helped me understand how to use it better. And so I would encourage everybody to, dig like the next layer deep on these things and understand what it's doing.
100%.
And again, remember, it's just math under the hood.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was trying to explain it to some friends. I'm like, you're looking at a model, we're talking about like RAG pipelines and so forth. Like, well, where does the LLM come in? And I was trying to explain, well, the LLM is, just imagine someone who was trained on everything as of last year, like August of last year. And then they went into a coma. And every time you wake them up, you ask them questions, they answer them, and then they fall back into their coma. That's what the LLMs are, that's all they know, is what they've been taught. A vector database, that's what they dreamed about the entire time they were in their coma. So they can answer everything that is in your augmented database, along with what they already know. And that's RAG.
Yeah.
And just like every human being, you in your head, you figure out what's the most relatable information to what you want to talk about, and then you eventually form that into words, and then you espouse it as your response. The LLM does the same thing a human does, just it's all math, right?
it's more explicit. I
Yeah.
don't know how the human brain works,
Yeah.
so maybe it's doing something.
Well, but it's trained in almost the exact same way as human beings, right? Good response, bad response. It enforces good responses. And it says no to bad responses. And then that makes you have better responses as a human being does. And this is how it works.
It
Anyway,
takes a lot more energy.
it takes a lot more energy. Like somehow we do it really well. All you have to do is give us McDonald's.
Math is a little less precise.
Yeah.
So,
We hallucinate. We make stuff up.
I've seen a really cool video. It's more math based, but there's a math YouTuber called 3D Brown, and he did a
Yeah.
course on neural nets and calculus.
Uh-huh.
So if you know calculus, it's like, oh, that's really cool to do. But I'm like, it's so interesting to see how far removed we are from dealing with that math, where it's like, oh, we just use text now,
Yeah,
to deal with,
it's beautiful.
the LLM is just so abstracted when we use it now.
Yeah, I think the thing that is most fascinating to me about all of this is how it at least seems like all our, the way we as humans put thoughts together and words together and stuff, that is maybe simpler than what we thought it was. And, because you end up
It's a good point.
putting a bunch of pretty simple little pieces together, but if you scale it big enough, you get something that feels pretty magical out of that. And so I think that's really interesting that maybe this thing that we thought was really special isn't as special as we thought it was.
Just remember you're unique, just like everybody else.
Yeah, I find that are interesting because how like a lot of people are like, oh, well, AI can't do this specific, like, oh, they can't make it secure, where it's like, you have an AI that is like specifically, I'm going to try and make this secure. They probably could do close to human, like not necessarily like directly, or maybe not now, but it's just like they could consume the same amount of resources that a human could at some point if you bet it enough and you trained it hard enough.
So not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Not
Like,
yet.
I don't
Not
think so
yet.
at all. But like, I find it like there is an arbitrary cap where like, oh, a human's gonna do better than this task.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so scary because you
Well,
never
if you're
know.
gonna talk, you gotta come up here.
Yeah.
I do have a question, what you think from the cost standpoint? Because like, I've been wondering, like, do you remember back in the early days of the internet, like they would give away internet access and they would hire people for crazy amounts of money, but then it finally kind of all simmered down and actually started running like a real business. And I feel like we're at that
AI
stage,
there.
like they're giving AI away, like, Anthropic and open it, like GitHub Copilot, et cetera. I'm like, I don't understand why I can do this for like 30 to $100 dollars a month, or even $300 a month. I mean, I get,
Because the interest rates were pretty low a few years ago.
well, right now they have a lot of investment, right? And they're building out all these data centers, et cetera. And then we haven't even thought about the intellectual property rights. Like, I'm in the middle, I'm part of a class action suit, where, I don't recall what AI it was trained on books I've written. And like, they're trying to settle for like between $3,000 and $10,000 a book. It's like $1 billion+ settle, like something crazy.
Yeah.
And like, eventually, like the money has to come from somewhere. Yeah, so, with the cost of like oil going up, fuel costs are higher, therefore, the cost to run a data center is higher because electricity costs go up. I mean, all costs go up when energy costs go up. It's just the way so I haven't seen that get passed on to us. So is that a bubble? I mean, I get AI bubbles from an investment perspective, but like from a cost perspective, that's why like, internally, I've been asking, hey, why don't we take that Mac Mini that we've got like 120 gigs of RAM on and spin up like DeepSeek or, Kini or whatever, any of the open models and start using that. Because at some point, like does Claude or, Copilot or, OpenAI suddenly, like take their cost model of like 10x, or it becomes so prohibitively expensive.
What do you think would be your limit? Like if they 10x it, would you still pay that price?
No, I think like personally, I think I would pay, like maybe $100 a month, because I do find a lot of value in it. I mean, there's other stuff I pay $100 a month for, so $100 isn't a big deal. But if it was like $300 a month, that's almost car payment territory. That's like 1/5 of rent for some people. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's
if you're
paying personally.
that.
As
Yeah, but it's not cheaper from an enterprise perspective.
Yeah, but like if you're competing against, let's say you're entering a race, and
Yeah.
one person, has a car, they bought a car, but you can't afford the car payment, so you're gonna enter with a horse. How long do you think you're gonna?
No.
race it?
I don't think that's fair. I get what you're saying though. I mean, but let's say it becomes, from a business standpoint, let's say it's $1,000. And we've got 35 developers, so it's $35,000. There's $420,000 a year. $420,000 a year. That's 4 developers.
Yeah.
That we can now not hire because of that. Now, do we get 4 developers worth of productivity when it goes to $1,000 a month? Yeah, that's where I think you have to ask the question. But if we could do the same thing on stupid Mac Mini and pay it, now we might wait a little longer. But,
Yeah.
but, if it costs, let's say $1,000 a month, to, have like, let's say a couple Mac Minis and the power that, runs with them, well, that's only $12,000 a year. I can still hire more developers. I can buy another Mac Mini, and those models are still open source. They're not being taken offline. And I think the people who get sued are the people who have the money. I mean, that's the way it works, right? So they're going to go after an Anthropic or an OpenAI. They're not going to go after Microsoft so much because Microsoft's just reselling other people's models. They have their own, but that's not what you're using. Can you even name Microsoft's model? No. Okay. So I used to know what it was, and then I don't. So and it's capable. It's very capable, and I think it might even be open source. But you don't use it because you use Claude or use Cursor or Codex or whatever. Use a commercial model.
Have you tried using the open models and comparing them against the main ones?
Not on a day-to-day basis, but I have done because I run those developer rants.
Yeah.
I did a comparison of just like the GPT.
Yeah.
It was GPT-4, but GPT versus like DeepSeek, which is also open. And the DeepSeek approach was effectively as fast, and it seemed good. It was a good approach. So, and that's why I brought up like Open Router, because you can get. Oh, I thought someone was coming up. Like Open Router also has a bunch of open models, but they host them for you. That's what you're paying for is the hosting of it, right? Because they bought the NVIDIA or whatever B200.
And the electric bill.
Yep.
The water bill and.
Yep. Every time I fix a bug, someone can't flush their toilet in Arkansas. But only once. They just try again. It works. It's okay. Don't hold the handle. Otherwise I can't get my work done. But I'm curious. I'm like, are you worried about the cost of this suddenly going up?
I am shocked at how cheap it is right now, so I do expect it goes up. The math is, let's say it's straightforward, but it's not impossible to do on what, I'm pretty sure in the next year or so, we're gonna have a pretty decent idea of how much more efficient developers are.
Yep.
And once you have that number, it's pretty easy to go, yeah, it's worth 60% of their salary to pay for this.
But is it worth 60% of every developer salary, or is it just worth 60%? Like, is it worth $60,000?
The tractor thing, I think we're
Yeah.
going to a world where there's fewer, better paid people.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't think it's tomorrow, but I think the future is there are some really well paid, really good AI developers for the, lack of a better term. And everybody that could embrace that or wouldn't embrace it is, not working in software engineering.
Yeah. But go ahead.
I do really love the tractor analogy too, because
I think we could probably wrap it up in about 2 minutes.
I was gonna say because I think another part of it is whenever the tractor came out, everyone's like every farming job it's gonna affect every job
I
possible.
forget the percent, but it was a huge percent of people that worked in farming when that happened. So.
But I think it's gonna be very specific. Or I feel like most of the application is just software engineering. There's a few others, but they're sort of cramming it in. But then also like with it, there's so many, like a tractor, you can have so many attachments in different ways
Yeah,
that it applies. And like, you basically rely on someone like a software developer to use that tool to do whatever you need. And they're gonna be doing a lot more different things too, instead of just one thing
yeah.
after another.
But I mean, so we're, what, 100 years on from the tractor being introduced? Do any of us feel like, we are
You're in it
poor
for the
because we're not
fields.
working in the fields,
Yeah, but you're not,
I'm sure it sucked for the farmers that worked back then, but, it led to a world where now people don't have to, work in the fields, so.
well, and you have to feed a much larger population of people. You simply couldn't do that without modernization.
Yeah.
Yeah, like just humans, we'd be hunting right now instead of sitting at a meetup. Like, sorry, I gotta go catch dinner.
The MEAT.
Yeah. Well, the baby rabbits are easy to catch. Well, these are what, too soon? Yeah, I guess too close to Easter. Yeah.
I've got scars from mowing, whatever.
Yeah, it's yeah.
A rabbit's,
That's what they call
a
this
baby
chicken
rabbit's
nose, right?
survival instinct is to stand still,
Yeah.
which is great when you're mowing.
Not good, not good. Anyway, great. Well, I think that was a good cover. Do we want to keep going or are we good? What do you guys think? Okay, no response, so, okay.
I think, you can talk a little about like how you keep up, right? So
How do you keep up?
how do you keep up and like what advice you would have for somebody that is starting new or?
If you're starting new, like I had a conversation, that hackathon. I was like, you need to understand how this stuff works. As an engineer, you need to know how to build things. You still need to know how to debug. I was just working on this yesterday. I was like, why am I getting this error? I'm like I'm asking AI and I'm looking through the logs, trying to figure it out. And then, our project manager, he went in and he's like, let me try incognito mode. I'm like, shouldn't it? But sure enough, it did. And then I'm like, so I'm like, well, log out, log back in, problem went away. And I'm like, what? But the AI spent like 90 minutes trying to just, it's like, wait, no, have you ever watched a thing? It's like, no, wait, let me revisit that, right? 90 minutes, something like that. And it even had like in capital letters, it's like, then why is it getting this error, exclamation point? It's writing this down. It's getting, dare I say, angry that it can't figure this out. And finally, I'm like, I made a note
It's
of it.
trained on all of the Stack Overflow posts.
I know. WTF, WTF, WTF. It's starting to show me angry emojis and GIF animations that I didn't think it could do. But man, it then like I stopped it and I said, oh, we figured it out. And this is how, and it's like, oh, and then, like
You're
update the
absolutely-
architecture document and Copilot instructions so that this is but this is what I was explaining to the people who want to be software engineers. You're not just a developer. You are an engineer. You need to understand software engineering principles. If you don't understand patterns and practices like architecture, it's going to be very hard to be a software engineer because now that's what you're going to have to understand. Is you have to look at the big picture now instead of just writing code. You're not being brought in to write hello world. Sorry. That's not what you're trying to build. It's like, what pattern is here? Like what's a singleton? What's the, iterator pattern? What's the flywheel? What is end tier design? At what point do I go? What does serverless mean? What is inversion of control? What are these things? What is secure coding practices? What is RAG? What is an LLM? How does it work? And but these are all things that you need to understand because the AI will give you something that looks good. Yeah. But it might not be performant. It'll be great for one person. You'll use it. You're like, wow, this works. Until you realize, oh shoot, I didn't know how to write this one ragged, so I asked it to build. Yeah, here's what I want. It was, oh, you want a 5-stage RAG pipeline? I'm like, okay. I let it build it. And then like I looked through the code, I'm trying to understand it. As I did parts of it, like explain it to me, write an architecture document. I'm like, okay, I think I understand it. But then I missed that when it did its ingestion service, it was processing one file at a time. I mean, because there was so much, it's information overload, even being a software architect. Yeah, I find myself tired at the end of the day, even if I wrote no code, because I've been like processing, how does the whole system work? And the AI doesn't do that. It doesn't get tired, and it gives me something it feels confident about, which based on its math is. And I'm like, you need to be able to look at this stuff and figure out if it's going to scale, if it works. And that doesn't mean that you're going to get it right in the beginning. You're not. But eventually you see enough systems that you get a gut feel for what's good and bad. And sometimes you have to fix the damn code yourself because it's complex business logic. And LLMs weren't trained on your business logic. They're trained on general logic. So you're going to have to adjunct the business rules, the analog business rules to what, the LLM can help you with. And you're going to have to build an application, but that's architecture. And they're like, oh, and I asked, I'm like, just like 50 kids. How many people know what architecture? 2 people raised their hand. 2. And that's where I think colleges are going to have to ramp up and shift. Like now that I think about it,
We were talking to
yeah.
the intern candidates earlier this week, and we were talking with one of them specifically, took them to lunch, and we were just asking them, how are they teaching this stuff in school? And he said they're doing the best they can, but it's changing so fast.
Enhanced temperature conversion code. It's like, stop doing that. The AI, there's libraries for all that shit.
So I had an internship junior and senior year, so I was like working with the APIs, but APIs are barely mentioned in college still. And it's like,
But you should know.
yeah,
right?
that's like all my job is working with API or like code for database too, like the
SDK,
database part.
API, MCPs now,
Yeah.
which are APIs for agents, for LLMs.
To the question about how do junior developers, how do junior developers succeed or something like that was the question.
How do you ramp up or stay current?
I think they have to, maybe, what was the exact question?
No, I mean, advice to not just junior, there's multiple levels, right? So I think juniors, we've all thought they have some new challenges to get into that role, but generally, even if you are a senior, right, like you're new to it, or if you've dabbled in a little, or you've worked in, Microsoft Copilot, how do you keep up? How do you learn it?
So I think our jobs as software engineers has become a lot less, obviously, about writing the code and more about making judgment calls. And
building systems.
so, I mean, that to say that falls under the idea of you're making judgment calls on how.
Judgment calls.
Yeah, and so to make good judgment calls, you need to have a good base of knowledge to draw from. And so I think a lot of succeeding in this world is spending as much time learning and using the tools to learn, because honestly, that's the best thing that they do is teaching. So I'm still working on this, because when I came up, there wasn't a good way to do all this stuff. I started all this stuff well before Stack Overflow. And so back then, you would hear a term and you just be like, okay, I'm gonna put that one back in my head. Maybe I'll get around to figure out what that term is.
We work query based.
You need to get in the habit of just going, okay, Claude, what does this mean? Can you explain this to me?
But I think you have to have in your head like a vision. Like I was telling the students, I'm like, you need to subscribe to, well, number one, you have to have the fundamentals. Otherwise, you're just like the person who's not an auto mechanic, right? you'll figure out a few things that you know how to do. But you're not an engineer
Yeah.
at that point.
You can jump a car.
You're not even a handyman, you know, you have a skill. Like, I know how to make fettuccine Alfredo. I'm not a sous chef,
Yeah, right.
you know?
Yeah.
The two aren't correlated.
No.
I would not say that I am a cook. You know, I know how to cook.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
use Copilot sometimes to find recipes.
Yeah.
You know, I search the web. Sometimes I don't even use AI. I'm crazy. But if you don't have the fundamentals, you can't even do the complicated stuff. Because eventually, I think that's where push comes to shove. Is you're either an engineer or you're not. And junior developers do grow up into intermediates and then seniors and then architects. Yeah. If they want, hence. But you can't do that without a solid foundation.
There's still gonna be a pipeline for juniors.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be probably smaller and it's gonna select for a different skill set than it did before. So,
I'm curious if you're going to accelerate, if you're going to graduate from being a junior more quickly these days. If you can go from junior to intermediate more quickly because of the rapid pace of innovation that you have, and that you're just forced to build and fix systems.
I think in a lot of ways, a lot of junior engineers are gonna be, you know, better suited for some stuff than more senior people who don't want to adapt to.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, you remember, you do anything you want on your last day. Yeah. You're either gonna accept AI or die in this industry. You know, it's just like accepting modern medication or dying, you know, from like the people who used to use leeches.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know, I guess you called them doctors back then, right? But if you didn't accept modern medicine, it's amazing how many patients die. You know, and if your patients are dying, that's your customer. Just, you know, sanity check on that. So if you're out of customers because they're dead, but that other doctor, his patients aren't dying, it's amazing how many people run off to that guy. Amazing. But he's using the new stuff. Yeah, but I just see, because I'm not technical, I just see they're not dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Dead or alive. What do I want to be?
So I don't think suddenly like every developer gets replaced. I think that's like, there's this like great replacement theory for developers that you're just gonna be replaced with AI. Because we'll just prompt, we'll send like 4 sentences and the AI will build the system. I'm like, well, I guess you've never built a system that has business rules in it. Yeah, you can say, build me something that works like OneNote and it will do it. But build something that works like my business, which is what someone who's not technical would like. They would say, what kind of business are you in? I don't know, the carpentry industry. Okay,
Witness.
what is the carpentry industry? Like, what do I need to build? Oh, I need an accounting system for carpentry. Okay, and it might build something. And it's like, but hey, you didn't take into account this, and then it goes adds a few more things. But you didn't realize that none of the data is related. There's no, oh, I never thought that I might need a login. Oh, okay. You know, like that's why people end up coming to the engineers, because the engineers know how to build a system. Yeah,
Ideally.
even a junior developer build that basic system.
What's it pay?
Yeah. But yeah, that's the industry. Did we answer your question?
Um,
What else? What else do we have to cover?
Uh,
What else should we cover?
spec-driven development. Rewriting.
Spec Kit's kind of cool. I take that back. What I've read about Spec Kit is very cool.
I've had my first encounter with OpenSpec
Oh,
this
okay.
last week. And I haven't seen the results yet because we're still working through, it's a project I'm only like tangentially involved in, so. But they're working through like building out a process for creating the spec and the proposal, spec, and then design or something like that. It's three different artifacts, but you start with this, the proposal is high level, and then the spec kind of lays out like the requirements, and then the design is more like implementation. But you work through that, and I'm really interested about how that's gonna work out. And it's been a really good way to think about doing stuff.
Well, what's open spec?
It's just another,
Is it like spec kit?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it might be a little bit lighter, less rigid than the spec
Okay.
kit.
Have you worked with any of the IDEs like what, not Kiro? Kiro? You know, that's what Amazon's thing was. The whole thing was, it's gonna have specifications and everything like built in. And that's the flow it'll push you through. And then I never used it after like Copilot kind of got its planning feature. And I was like, oh, well, I don't.
Yeah.
All it is a fork of VS Code, yet another fork of VS Code. Yeah,
Port number 5,000.
Yeah.
27.
that's what they all are. There's some version of VS Code that's really supposed to be a plugin. Sorry, if you used those other solutions, I'm curious why you would. But I'm not a Claude guy. Like that's,
Yeah.
But that's not because I don't like Claude. I've never used it. Not once, and I probably should. So I can't say it's bad. I mean, the code just leaked and for their CLI, and apparently it's beautiful. So I read a breakdown of it, and I'm like, wow, like the way it handles caching and how it organizes the messages. You know, like it has these what is it called? Not barriers, breakpoints, something like that. And it's just very cool, like how it structures everything and just its response loop. Like only 200 of the like 500,000 lines is the API calls. The rest is the.
But that's a solid
the-
problem. So yeah, I would recommend everybody look into spectrum development. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
And
I'm a fan of spectrum development.
I have not, I'm not gonna say I haven't had the opportunity. I have not had the time to start a project from scratch yet. But I am so excited to start a project from scratch. Just for, in this world, because I feel like it's different working on an existing code base than it is on
Yes.
this new one that has been born in the age of AI. So
Yeah,
That's called spec.
spec-driven development.
spec-driven development.
It's,
So,
I'm a big fan of that.
Open spec kits. There's another one that's, they're just like thought models on how to do it, but it all basically is writing requirements in text in a way that is useful for the AI to implement something. So
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like when you look at it, I'm curious what see, we need to follow up on this.
yeah,
Like, how did it go? So
I'm
let
keeping an eye.
me know next month.
Yeah.
Let us know next month
Yeah.
what happened. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, hey, thank you all for joining. I hope you learned a lot today. I hope that was fun. That was a lot of good information. I wish we could have gotten Jason up here and talk about what like what he's seeing in the industry, but maybe next month with the lightning talks, you could talk about it. Although that won't be recorded, so that was your plan all along. All right, well, thanks. Please join us again on the Indy.net Consortium. We'll meet again next month, first Wednesday of the month. And thanks for coming, and thanks to everyone who joined. And happy holidays.